Ambassador Jinho walked slowly across the huge crystal floor toward the giant round table in the center of the council chamber. His black boots made soft, clicking sounds on the smooth surface that stretched out like a frozen lake beneath the dome of stars above. The chamber was so big that his voice would echo if he spoke too loudly, but right now he did not want to speak at all. 3 months. 3 whole months. He had been sitting at this table listening to alien creatures talk down to him like he was a child. The council members sat in their fancy floating chairs looking down at the human delegation with eyes that showed nothing but contempt. Some of them did not even have eyes, but Jinho could feel their disgust anyway. The insectoid prime speaker clicked his forearms together in what Jinho had learned was their version of laughing. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with a shiny black shell that reflected the chamber lights. His head looked like a giant mantis, but with more teeth than any bug should have. When he spoke, his voice buzzed like 1,000 flies. Behind Jinho sat Ambassador Sujin, the only other human in this room full of monsters. She had been his partner for 15 years, first in the military and now in this diplomatic nightmare. She knew him well enough to see the warning signs, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands started to make fists even when he tried to keep them flat on the table. The council had been meeting for 7 hours today, just like yesterday and the day before that, and every day for 3 months. The agenda never changed. The aliens would present their demands, the humans would try to negotiate. The aliens would refuse everything and add new demands. And then they would schedule another meeting for tomorrow. Jinho looked around the chamber at the different species that made up the Galactic Council. The crystalline beings looked like walking diamonds, but they were cold and sharp in personality too. The energy wraiths floated in their containment suits, crackling with power that could kill a human with one touch. The aquatic collective members sat in their water tanks making gurgling sounds that their translators turned into words. The robotic hegemony representatives stood perfectly still like metal statues with glowing red eyes. Every single one of them thought they were better than humans. Every single one of them treated Earth like it was some backward planet full of stupid children who should be grateful for any attention at all. The prime speaker was talking again. Jinho tried to listen, but the words were the same as always. Your species is too young, too violent, too primitive. You must accept our guidance. You must pay tribute to the council. You must follow our rules. You must do as we say. Jinho remembered the first day he had arrived at this station. The council headquarters was impressive. He had to admit, a massive structure built inside. A hollow asteroid with chambers and halls that could hold millions of beings. The technology was amazing. Gravity fields that could be adjusted for different species. Air that could be changed to meet any breathing requirements. Food dispensers that could create meals for any biology. But all that technology came with a price. The price was freedom. The price was dignity. The price was being treated like an equal. Instead of a pet, Sujin shifted in her chair behind him. She was getting restless, too. He could hear it in the way she breathed. Jinho knew she was thinking the same thing he was thinking. They had come here with such hope. 3 months ago, Earth had been so excited to join the galactic community, to trade with other worlds, to learn new technologies, to explore the stars together with other intelligent species. What a joke. The prime speaker was reading from a long list of demands now. His buzzing voice filled the chamber as he explained all the things humans would have to do. If they wanted to be part of the council, Earth would have to pay massive tribute payments that would take all the wealth from their colonies. Humans would have to give up their military and rely on council protection instead. Human ships would only be allowed to travel on approved routes. Human colonies could only be built where the council said they could be built. And in return, what did humans get in return? They would be allowed to sit at this table and listen to aliens tell them what to do. They would be junior members with no real vote. They would be servants dressed up as partners. Jinho had heard enough. He had been patient. He had been diplomatic. He had tried every trick he learned in 20 years of negotiation. But there was no negotiating with people who did not see you as people. He stood up slowly. The movement caught everyone's attention. The buzzing and clicking and gurgling in the chamber got quieter. The prime speaker stopped reading his list of demands. Jin-Ho looked around the table at all the alien faces, some curious, some annoyed, some just bored. He wondered if any of them understood what was about to happen. He wondered if any of them realized they had pushed too far. Your terms are unacceptable. Jin-Ho said. His voice was calm and steady, but it carried clearly through the huge chamber. The prime speaker clicked his arms again. That is not your choice to make human. You will accept our terms or your species will be cut off from galactic civilization. You will have no access to hyperspace routes, no trade with advanced worlds, no protection from hostile forces. Jin-Ho nodded slowly, as if he was thinking about this. Then he reached down and picked up his folder of documents. He closed it with a soft snap that seemed loud in the quiet chamber. Then humanity withdraws from these negotiations, he said, permanently. The word hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched on until it became uncomfortable even for beings who lived for thousands of years. The prime speaker was the first to recover. You cannot be serious. He stammered for the first time, losing his arrogant tone. No species has ever walked away from council negotiations. Su Jin stood up beside Jin-Ho. Her chair scraped against the crystal floor. The sound was harsh and final. We are serious, she said. Her voice was harder than Jin-Ho's, cold like space itself. We came here hoping to find partners instead. We found masters looking for slaves. She picked up her own documents and turned toward the exit. Jin-Ho followed her. Their footsteps echoed in the silent chamber as they walked toward the massive doors that led out of the council hall. Wait, the prime speaker called out. You do not understand what you are doing. Without council membership, your people will be isolated. Your colonies will fail. Your species will fall behind and be forgotten. Jin-Ho stopped at the doors and turned back one last time. Maybe, he said. But that will be our choice to make, not yours. The doors opened with a soft hiss of air. The human delegation walked out into the corridor beyond, leaving behind a chamber full of shocked aliens who suddenly realized they might have made a very big mistake. Su Jin looked at Jin-Ho as they walked down the long hallway toward their ship. Think they will come after us, she asked. Jin-Ho smiled for the first time in months. Eventually, he said, but by then, it will be too late. Admiral Taeyang stood on the bridge of the battleship Soul's Pride, watching the stars through the massive view screen that dominated the front wall. The ship was huge even by human standards, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from nose to tail, and bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. But today was not about fighting. Today was about something much more important. The admiral was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his years as an engineer. Before he joined the fleet, his uniform was simple, dark blue with silver stars on the collar, but everyone on the bridge knew he was the most dangerous human in space. Not because he was violent, but because he was smart. Smart enough to see what? The council members had missed smart enough to plan for this day long before it arrived. Lieutenant Commander Hai-Jin approached from the communications station. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with quick eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to coordinate with all the human colonies scattered across 12 star systems, and she had been working 18-hour days since the walkout began. Status report. Admiral, she said, standing at attention. Taeyang turned from the view screen and nodded. All colonies reporting in, yes, sir. All human worlds have activated Fortress Protocol as ordered. Trade with all council species has been completely suspended. Our merchant fleet has been recalled, and every ship is being retrofitted for defense purposes. The civilians are asking questions, but they trust the government directive. Fortress Protocol was the name for humanity's secret plan. The council thought humans were just angry and would come crawling back within a few weeks. They had no idea that human leaders had been preparing for this moment for over a year. Every colony, every ship, every military unit knew exactly what to do. When the order came, Captain Min-Su walked over from the engineering section. He was a short, stocky man who could fix anything that broke and improve anything that worked. His hands were always dirty with grease and his uniform never looked quite right. But he was the best engineer in the human fleet. The new hyperspace drives are working perfectly, he announced. with a huge grin. "We are running 3 weeks ahead of schedule on the Independence Project. The test flights yesterday exceeded all our expectations." Tae Yang smiled. The Independence Project was humanity's biggest secret. While the Council had been busy treating humans like servants, human scientists had been working around the clock to develop their own hyperspace technology. The Council thought they controlled all faster than light travel in the galaxy. They were wrong. "How many ships are ready?" he asked. Minsu checked his tablet. 27 destroyers have the new drives installed. 15 cruisers are ready for testing. We should have the entire fleet converted within 2 months. The drives are not as fast as Council technology, but they work and they are getting better every day. The Independence Project was more than just hyperspace drives, though. It was a complete plan to make humanity self-sufficient. The Council had never bothered to learn how humans did things. They just demanded the results. When human miners brought them rare metals, the Council never asked how humans could work in conditions that killed other species. When human farmers fed Council colonies, the Council never wondered how humans grew food on dead worlds. Now they were about to find out. "What about resource production?" asked Tai Yang Hyejin, consulted her reports. "All mining operations are exceeding quotas. The asteroid belt facilities are running at 120% capacity. The deep core mining on Titan 7 brought up enough rare metals yesterday to supply our entire fleet for 6 months." The truth was that humans had always been better at getting resources than anyone else in the galaxy. They just had not realized how much better. Other species needed perfect conditions, ideal temperatures, controlled environments. Humans could work anywhere. They could adapt to anything. They could make tools and machines that functioned in places where other technology failed. The agricultural reports are even better, continued Hyejin. The hydroponic facilities on New Sol are producing enough food to feed all our colonies with surplus left over. The bacterial farms on Busan 2 are creating protein compounds that taste better than anything the Council species make, Admiral. "What about the Council response?" asked Minsu. "They must be getting desperate by now." Tae Yang walked back to the view screen and looked out at the stars. "Intelligence reports show that 17 Council species are already experiencing critical shortages," he said. "The Altarians are in the worst shape. They were completely dependent on our rare metal exports for their defense fleet." He turned back to face his officers. "The crystalline beings are starting to panic too. They cannot figure out how to replace our food exports. Their own agricultural worlds only work under perfect conditions. When anything goes wrong, they have no backup plans." Hyejin pulled up a holographic display showing Council space. The map was dotted with red markers indicating colonies and worlds experiencing problems. The red dots were spreading like a disease. "They are trying to contact us every day." She reported diplomatic messages, trade offers, even threats. "They want to negotiate, but we are following orders. Complete communication blackout until further notice." The communication blackout was part of the plan too. The Council was used to species that begged and pleaded when they were in trouble. They expected humans to come running back as soon as things got difficult, but humans were not like other species. Humans were stubborn. When they made a decision, they stuck with it. "What about the Vorlak Empire?" asked Tai Yang. The Vorlaks were one of the most aggressive Council species. Known for solving problems with military force rather than diplomacy, intelligence suggests they are considering military action against our outer colonies, reported Hyejin. But our defense preparations are ahead of schedule. Every human world now has orbital defense platforms and our patrol fleets are ready for anything. Minsu laughed. "Let them try. Our ships are built for war, theirs are built for show. We work in asteroid fields and gravity wells that would tear their pretty vessels apart. If they want a fight, they will get one they will never forget." But Tae Yang knew the Vorlaks were not the real problem. The real problem was that the Council still did not understand what they were dealing with. They thought this was about trade agreements and political status. They thought humans were just another species that could be bullied into submission. They were wrong on every level. Humans had spent thousands of years learning to survive on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to work together when things got bad, to adapt when conditions changed, to fight when they had to. Humans did not give up. They did not back down. And they did not forget when someone treated them badly. Continue all. Protocols ordered Taeyang no contact with council species until they learned to treat us as equals, not as servants. The bridge crew nodded and returned to their duties. They all knew this was just the beginning. The council would try diplomacy first, then bribes, then threats, then maybe even military action. But humans were ready for all of it. The galaxy was about to learn that the species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians were actually the most dangerous beings in known space. Not because they were violent, but because they were absolutely impossible to defeat. Ambassador Nalcor of the Aquatic Collective floated in his emergency transport pod, racing through the corridors of the council station toward the main assembly hall. His gills were working overtime, filtering the artificial water that kept him alive outside his home ocean, but stress was making it hard to breathe properly. 6 weeks had passed since the humans walked away, and his entire civilization was collapsing. The assembly hall was chaos when he arrived. Hundreds of council members from dozens of species were shouting at each other in languages that the universal translators could barely keep up with. Some were demanding military action. Others were begging for diplomatic solutions. A few were already talking about abandoning their colonies and retreating to their homeworlds. Nalcor pushed his pod to the central speaking platform and activated the emergency address system. The noise in the chamber died down as his amplified voice echoed off the crystal walls. "My people are dying," he announced without any formal greeting. His voice cracked with emotion that surprised even him. The Aquatic Collective has lost 3 entire star systems in the past week. Shocked gasps filled the chamber. The Aquatic Collective was one of the oldest and most stable council civilizations. They had colonies spanning hundreds of worlds and had never lost territory to anyone. "Our industrial centers have completely shut down," continued Nalcor. "We cannot produce the tools and machines. Our colonies need to survive. The rare metals that humans provided were the foundation of our entire manufacturing system. Without them, our technology is useless." He activated a holographic display showing images from his homeworld. The pictures were devastating factories standing empty and silent, cities going dark as power systems failed, aquatic beings floating listlessly in tanks that were slowly becoming too toxic to support life. "We tried to find alternative suppliers," Nalcor continued, "but no other species can extract the deep core metals that humans mine so easily. The crystalline beings promise to help, but their mining equipment fails in the high-pressure environments where humans work without problems." More displays showed the failed attempts. Other species had tried to take over human mining operations, but their technology could not handle the extreme conditions. Their ships were crushed by gravity. Their workers died from radiation. Their equipment melted in temperatures that humans considered normal working conditions. The Energy Wraith's representative flickered into visibility near the platform. "Our situation is equally desperate," it announced in its buzzing electronic voice. "Our containment systems require human, manufactured components that we cannot replicate. The energy fields that keep us stable are failing across 17 of our colonies." Similar reports came from around the chamber. The crystalline beings needed human-grown food compounds that somehow provided nutrients their own agricultural worlds could not produce. The robotic hegemony required rare earth elements for their manufacturing processes that only human miners seemed able to find. The insectoid species had discovered that human agricultural techniques could feed their rapidly growing populations in ways their own farming methods never could. "Prime Speaker, how did our intelligence services miss this dependency?" asked the representative from the Silicon Collective, the insectoid. Prime Speaker, who had been so arrogant 6 weeks ago, now looked defeated. His shell had lost its shine and his movements were jerky with stress. "We focused on monitoring human military capabilities and political activities," he admitted. "We never studied their economic integration into our systems. We assumed they were replaceable." Councillor Vex Prima floated forward in her tank. She had been studying the crisis longer than anyone else, and her analysis was the most complete. "The truth is, we became dependent without realizing it. She said humans did not just trade with us. They solved problems we could not solve. They worked in places we could not work. They adapted to conditions that would kill our people. She activated her own display, showing a complex web of connections between human activities and Council civilization. The web was so intricate, it looked like a living organism with humans at the center, connected to almost every aspect of galactic life. We built our civilization, assuming humans would always be available to handle the difficult, dangerous, and unpleasant tasks. When they withdrew, they took with them capabilities we had forgotten. We needed intelligence. Chief Mordin stepped forward with new information that made everyone in the chamber even more nervous. The situation is getting worse, he announced. The Vorlak Empire has mobilized its entire battle fleet. They are planning to invade human space and force the colonies back into compliance with Council authority. This sparked immediate outrage from the more moderate Council members. That would violate every treaty and law of galactic civilization, shouted the crystalline representative. What civilization? Asked Vex Prima bitterly. We treated the most adaptable and resourceful species in the galaxy like servants. And now we are facing the consequences of our arrogance. The debate that followed was unlike anything in Council history. Species that had been allies for centuries were blaming each other for the crisis. Some wanted to negotiate, others demanded military action. A few were already making secret plans to surrender their Council membership and try to make individual deals with human colonies. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone expected. The military faction led by the Vorlaks wanted to use force to bring humans back into line. They argued that allowing one species to defy the Council would encourage others to rebel. The diplomatic faction wanted to offer humans full membership with equal voting rights and complete autonomy over their internal affairs. In the end, sanity barely prevailed. The Council voted to attempt one final diplomatic mission. They would send their most senior ambassadors to human space, with an offer of full partnership rather than membership. The humans would be treated as equals, not as junior members, but as the ambassadors prepared for their mission. Everyone in the chamber knew it might already be too late. The damage to Council civilization was accelerating. Every day brought new reports of colonies failing, systems shutting down, and populations beginning to panic. Some species were already experiencing food riots. Others were seeing their economies collapse entirely. Humans had been gone for only 6 weeks, but it felt like years. The mighty Galactic Council that had ruled the galaxy for 5 centuries was discovering that their power had been built on the backs of beings they had never bothered to understand. As the emergency session ended and the various species returned to their quarters to deal with their individual crises, Vex Prima remained floating in the empty chamber, looking at the data displays that showed the continuing collapse of everything. She had believed in the humans had not fired a single shot or issued a single threat. They had simply walked away and let the Council destroy itself through its own incompetence and arrogance. It was perhaps the most devastating defeat in galactic history, achieved without any violence at all. The question now was whether the Council ambassadors could convince the humans to save a civilization that had never shown them any respect. The answer to that question would determine the future of every species in known space. The Council fleet approached the human colony of New Busan with their weapons powered down and white flags of truce broadcasting on all frequencies. Admiral Grick's corps of the combined Council fleet had fought in dozens of wars, but he had never felt as nervous as he did today. The 12 ships under his command carried the most senior ambassadors from every major Council species, and they were coming not as conquerors, but as beggars. On the lead ship, Counselor Vex Prima floated in her portable tank, staring out at the human colony through the view screen. New Busan looked nothing like a Council world. There were no massive gleaming cities or perfect geometric structures. Instead, the colony sprawled across the planet's surface in what looked like organized chaos. Industrial facilities mixed with residential areas. Mining operations sat next to farms, orbital platforms that looked like they had been built from scrap metal, but somehow worked perfectly. The human defense fleet that met them was even more surprising. 20 warships that looked like they had been designed by engineers rather than artists. They were covered in armor plating and weapon systems, with no thought given to beauty or elegance. But the energy readings from those Ugly ships made the Council fleet sensors scream warnings. These human vessels were built for war in a way that Council ships never were. Ambassador Jin Ho waited in the simple conference room at the Colony Administrative Center. The room had a plain, metal table surrounded by basic chairs with no decorations or fancy technology. It was the kind of place where people came to work, not to impress visitors. When the Council delegation entered the room, they looked completely out of place. The insectoid, Prime Speaker, towered over everyone else, clicking his arms nervously. Vex Prima floated in her tank, making soft gurgling sounds. The crystalline representative sparkled in the artificial light like a walking diamond. The energy wraith flickered and buzzed in its containment suit. Jin Ho did not stand up to greet them. He sat calmly at the table with Ambassador Su Jin beside him. Both humans looked relaxed and confident, like people who held all the advantages in a negotiation. The contrast with the desperate council members could not have been more obvious. "We come with an offer of full council membership." The Prime Speaker began, his voice lacking all its former arrogance. "Equal voting rights, complete autonomy over internal affairs, and immediate access to all council technology and trade networks." Jin Ho listened without interrupting. When the Prime Speaker finished talking, the human ambassador was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched out until it became uncomfortable. Jin Ho said finally. The council delegation exchanged confused glances. They had expected negotiations, demands, counter-offers. Instead, they got a simple rejection that left them speechless. "But this is everything your species originally requested," stammered Vex Prima. "This is more than we have ever offered any new member civilization." Su Jin leaned forward and spoke for the first time. "That was 2 months ago," she said calmly. "Things have changed since then. We have learned something important about ourselves, and about you." She gestured toward a wall display that showed statistics from human space: population growth up 30%, industrial production up 50%, new colonies established on 12 additional worlds, scientific breakthroughs in faster than light travel materials engineering and agricultural techniques. "We do not need the council," she continued. "We never did. We just thought we wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But we discovered we were already part of something bigger. We were part of humanity." Jin Ho activated another display showing the state of council space. The images were devastating. Empty factories, dark cities, failed colonies, populations fleeing their homeworlds. The mighty Galactic Council was collapsing, and everyone in the room knew it. "Meanwhile, your civilization is falling apart because you forgot how to solve problems without us," he said. "You became so specialized, so dependent on others doing the hard work, that you cannot survive. When those others are not available." The Prime Speaker clicked his arms desperately. "Then what do you want? Name your price. We will pay anything, give you anything, if you will just resume trade and cooperation." "Partnership," Jin Ho said firmly. "Not membership in your council, but alliance between equals. We will trade with individual species who treat us with respect. We will cooperate on projects that benefit everyone. We will even help solve your current crisis. But we will do it as sovereign equals, not as junior members grateful for scraps from your table." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time in 5 centuries, the Council found themselves accepting terms rather than dictating them. The humans presented their conditions with calm confidence, while the Council delegates agreed to demands they would have considered outrageous just months earlier. Humanity would remain completely independent with their own government, their own military, and their own territory. The Council would recognize human sovereignty over all 12 star systems plus any new colonies. Humans chose to establish individual council species could negotiate separate trade agreements with humanity, but only as equals trading partners, not masters and servants. Human ships would have free passage through all space, including areas the Council had previously declared off-limits. Human colonies would be protected by human military forces, not Council peacekeepers. Any Council species that threatened human interest would face immediate economic sanctions and possible military action. The old system of tribute payments and submission to council authority was completely eliminated. Humans would trade their resources and services, but only in exchange for fair payment and equal treatment. The days of demanding compliance through threats and intimidation were over as the treaties were signed. Admiral Tae Yang watched from the orbital command station. Above New Busan, Captain Minsu stood beside him, grinning as he read the final terms. "Think they have learned their lesson?" asked Minsu. "Some of them have replied, Tai Yang. The smart ones anyway. The ones who realize that cooperation works better than domination." "And the others," Tai Yang smiled. "They will learn eventually. Humans are very good teachers." The transformation was immediate. Council species that signed the new partnership agreements found their problems solved almost overnight. Human miners returned to the asteroid fields. Human farmers began shipping food to hungry colonies. Human engineers started repairing the systems that had failed during the crisis. But everything was different now. Humans worked as partners, not servants. They negotiated fair contracts instead of accepting whatever they were offered. They demanded respect and got it, because the alternative was watching entire civilizations collapse. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of the mighty Galactic Council ruling over lesser species was over. In its place was something new. A community of equals where problems were solved through cooperation rather than domination, where the strong helped the weak without expecting submission in return. It had taken just 2 months for humanity to transform galactic civilization without firing a shot. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive barbarians had become the most powerful force in known space, not through conquest, but through the simple act of walking away and proving they did not need anyone else. The council members who had treated humans like children now came to them for help with problems their own advanced civilizations could not solve, and the humans helped because that was what humans did. They solved problems, adapted to challenges, and never gave up. But they did it on their own terms as equals in a galaxy that was finally learning to treat them with the respect they had always deserved. 3 weeks had passed since the humans walked out of the council chamber, and Counselor Vex Prima of the Altarian Collective could not sleep. Her species did not need much sleep anyway, but lately she found herself floating in her tank, staring at data screens that showed numbers she did not want to believe. Her tentacles moved nervously through the water as she reviewed the economic reports for the 3rd time that night. The numbers were getting worse every day. Trade routes that had been profitable for centuries were suddenly showing massive losses. Mining operations across 17 star systems were shutting down. Industrial worlds were running out of raw materials. The problem was simple, but terrifying. Humans had stopped selling. To the council, Vex Prima had called an emergency session of the full council for today. She floated in her transport pod through the corridors of the station, watching other council members hurry toward the main chamber. Everyone looked worried. Even the usually calm crystalline beings were moving faster than normal. The chamber was packed when she arrived. Every seat was filled and many members were standing in the back. The nervous energy in the room was so thick, you could almost touch it. Beings, who normally acted superior and confident, now whispered to each other like scared children. Vex Prima moved to the central speaking platform. Her pod settled into the docking station, and she activated the holographic display that would show her data to everyone in the chamber. "We have a problem," she announced without any of the usual formal greetings. The room fell silent immediately. Her first chart appeared in the air above the platform, showing trade numbers from the past month. The red lines going downward were so steep they looked like cliffs. Since the humans withdrew from negotiations and closed their borders to council trade, 17 of our member species are facing critical resource shortages. She continued. 5 more species will join them within the next 2 weeks. The insectoid prime speaker, who had been so confident 3 weeks ago, now clicked his arms in distress. "Impossible," he buzzed. "That cannot be accurate. Humans control only 12 star systems. They are a minor species." Vex Prima had expected this reaction. She activated her second display. This one showed a map of known space with human territories marked in blue and council territories in green. The human space looked tiny compared to the vast council. Domains, you are correct, she said. The humans control only 12 star systems, but those 12 systems produce more rare metals than our top 50 mining worlds. Combined, shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Several council members stood up to get a better look at the display. The third chart appeared showing production numbers, mining efficiency ratios, resource extraction rates. The human numbers were so high, some council members thought there had been a mistake. How is this possible? Demanded the representative from the Crystalline Collective. Their mining technology is primitive compared to ours. Vex Prima had studied this question for weeks. She had the answer, but she knew nobody would like it. Their technology is primitive, she agreed, but they use it in ways we never considered. They send miners into asteroid fields that would destroy our ships. They extract resources from planets with gravity so high, it would crush most of our workers. They dive into gas giants and mine materials from the core. They work in conditions that would kill most council species. The fourth display showed images from human mining operations. Council members gasped as they watched human workers in heavy suits, walking on the surface of worlds with crushing gravity. They saw human ships diving into asteroid fields at speeds that seemed insane. They watched humans extract materials from environments that looked like hell. But mining is not the only problem. Vex Prima continued. The fifth chart showed agricultural production numbers. Human farming worlds feed 43 of our colonies. Their crop yields are 3 times higher than our best agricultural planets. Defense Minister Kell 7 of the robotic hegemony processed this information with mechanical precision. His red optical sensors focused on the data streams flowing across his internal screens. Additional information, he announced in his emotionless voice. Human agricultural techniques allow food production in environments our experts classified as sterile wasteland. More images appeared showing human farms on worlds that looked dead crops growing in artificial atmospheres, food produced in underground facilities built into solid rock. Humans growing enough food to feed billions on planets that other species could not even survive on. The truth was becoming clear, and it was humiliating. While the Council had focused on building perfect controlled environments, humans had learned to thrive anywhere. While Council, species needed ideal conditions to function. Humans made any conditions work for them, Vex. Prima was not finished yet. The sixth display showed transportation and logistics networks. Human cargo ships service over 200 Council worlds, she announced. They transport goods through regions of space we consider too dangerous. Our own shipping companies refuse to enter the void, nebula, or the gravity wells of Kepler 7. But human pilots fly through these areas regularly. The images showed human ships navigating hazards that would terrify most spacers, flying through nebulas filled with deadly radiation, maneuvering around black holes that could tear apart any vessel that made a mistake, threading their way through asteroid fields moving at relativistic speeds. They are crazy, announced someone from the back of the chamber. No, corrected Vex Prima. They are fearless. There is a difference. The seventh display was the most frightening of all. It showed technological development projections. Intelligence reports indicate humans have been developing their own hyperspace technology, she said quietly. The prototype drives are crude but functional. Within 6 months, they may not need our hyperspace networks at all. This caused an uproar in the Chamber. Council species had controlled hyperspace technology for thousands of years. It was their greatest advantage over younger civilizations. If humans developed independent hyperspace capability, they would be truly free. The Prime Speaker raised his arms for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke in a voice that had lost all its earlier arrogance. Send a diplomatic message, he ordered. Offer them standard council membership with full voting rights. We tried that, announced Trade Minister Quonal. The humans are not responding to any of our communications. They have cut off all contact with council species. Their ships refuse to acknowledge our vessels. Their colonies will not accept our ambassadors. Vex Prima activated her final display. This one showed economic projections for the next year. If human trade remained cut off, the numbers were catastrophic. 17 species facing complete economic collapse. Industrial production down by 60%. Food shortages, affecting billions of council citizens without human resources and services. She said the Council will face the worst economic crisis in our recorded history. We built our civilization assuming humans would always be there to solve the problems. We could not solve ourselves. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The mighty Galactic Council, rulers of thousands of worlds, masters of technologies beyond imagination, were dependent on a species they had treated like primitive servants. Crystalline representative spoke first, his voice like breaking glass. What do we do now? Nobody had an answer. The humans were gone, and the Council was finally beginning to understand what they had lost. The beings who could work anywhere, adapt to anything, and solve any problem were no longer willing to help. The species that could thrive in conditions that killed others had decided they did not need the Council anymore. For the first time in 500 years, the Galactic Council was afraid.